Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Trip Foreman, and we've got a special guest, Taylor Guest. Actually, a special guest, and his name is Taylor Guest, and he is from Future Fins, and we are talking about quad fins in this video. We're going to dive deep into quads. Again, so many fin choices, especially when you talk with quads, because you got quad fronts, quad rears, you know, pre-built quad sets.
For sure.
A thruster that gets converted to a quad set. Let's zoom all the way out. Let's talk about why go quad. Like if you're typically riding a thruster, like how is a quad going to, you know, how does a quad feel different, and like kind of what does it do for the performance of a surfboard?
I think for me, when I've dabbled with quads, I've always liked them in better surf. One thing that I related it to is quads, especially with a symmetrical or an 80-20 foil. It's kind of like, it's hard to do the quick directional changes like a thruster where you can pivot off the bottom a lot easier, where sometimes they maybe felt stuck, or it was like once you're on the roller coaster, that's your line that you're drawing. So the beauty about our a la carte quad rears, in Honeycomb, they go across the sizes, they go across a neutral template, a pivot template, as well as foil. I was always an advocate. I love the John medium. I rode that in almost everything. Going to a quad, I went to a small or medium quad rear that had a flat foil, because that was the easiest for me to really kind of free up the quad a bit and not feel so stuck sometimes. The big thing with quads is fin box placement. So the more the fin boxes are closer to the stringer, the more it acts like a center fin, and you want those to be symmetrical, your quad rears. As those quad rear boxes start to migrate out towards the rail, that's where like a flat foiled fin is going to be better, acts more like a side fin. The difference between what you're going to feel in an 80-20 or symmetrical versus flat is the 80-20 and symmetrical are going to be a lot more predictable and engaged, where going to the flat, it's going to create more lift, a little bit more speed, and it's going to be a little bit more free feeling. A little looser.
Like when you're saying like the further they migrate from the stringer, like is there measurements for that, or is it just eyeballing it? Like
kind of a rule of thumb, like I'm looking at this paddle act tail right here, like that's pretty neutrally placed for the most part, and it's a bigger wave board. So being that it's a bigger wave board, having an 80-20 or symmetrical is going to benefit you, where if you're riding a quad in smaller to average surf, that's where the flat foil is going to benefit you a little bit. Ideally, that board that you're riding is going to probably have a wider tail block. The quad rear placement's going to be a little wider because it's geared towards smaller surf. But if it's a, say, 6.0 5-fin shortboard, which not too many people do that nowadays anymore, but the 80-20 is kind of best of both worlds. So that's a great starting point if you're new to quads. Pick your favorite thruster front, get a comparable sized quad rear with that 80-20 foil, and that's a good starting point.
There's so many boards now that are offered as 5-fin. What would be your recommendation for when somebody's switching from thruster to a quad? Let's say Paizel, Phantom, Roundtail, 5-fin. Right? Like good all around, everyday, hybrid style board with a 5-fin setup. When should they be thinking about switching a quad from thruster?
And that kind of comes into the preference of the surfer too. Guys ride quads anything from 2 foot to 20 foot, or there's guys that will go to a quad when it's bigger, or they'll go to quads when it's smaller and still ride thrusters either side of the time, or twins, or whatever floats their boat. But for, I would say, a run-of-the-mill board, a 5-fin option, user-friendly, just average shortboard, great starting point would to go with the thruster, see how that feels. And then as the waves get a little bit better, I would probably try them in better surf first. Because unless you're a quad guy, or you're riding a unique quad set that's geared towards smaller surf, I feel like there's going to be more drag in smaller surf having another fin back there. In general, big wave, point and shoot, that's kind of where I think quads really are where it's at.
What about at the bottom end, like at the grovel end?
The grovel end,
like, and I'm talking like, you know, puddle jumpers,
so when you
white
go to
tigers and
that side of things, that we do have like split keel quads, the controller. Matt has an Evil quad, which is kind of that style. There's a new album quad we're coming out with in a few months that's great for that style of board, where the tail block's really wide, the box placement's really wide. It takes a bigger quad set.
Set for small waves.
And then you're hauling ass.
You talked a little bit about your John front in a medium, and then like a small and a medium trailer. that you're using
small
with
or
it.
medium,
Yeah. And that's a good segue into like the next question, which is describe to us like the difference in the performance and the feel and like tuning it and stuff, going more equally sized front and rear versus spreading those apart, like going large in the front, small in the back, or medium in the front. Like as you make the difference more noticeable, what does the surfer feel?
So with quad only sets like the EA or the Rasta quad, those are more, or stretch quad, they're more similar in size, but those front fins are a lot smaller than an average thruster front. So if you're taking your thruster front that you already like, it's good just to tee it up with a similar size. Say you're riding a medium, ride a medium quad rear.
Okay.
But if you're in a specialty set that's just geared for a quad like the stretch, that front fin of the stretch is going to be quite a bit smaller than in surface area than like a front fin of a thruster.
Right.
So that's why the quad rear got bigger.
And so is it just making the math work, or does the equal size, like what I'm getting at, like to the end user, does an equal size quad give you a performance that's like kind of more drivey, where larger front, smaller backs gives you more pivot off the top and more release, kind of like what it does in thrusters? Yeah,
I think so. When it comes to running a thruster front like the John medium with say a medium-sized quad rear, I feel like you get a bit more release out of that set, because a lot of the specialty quads, they usually have foils or a unique bevel going on where there's more going on to that set than just meets the eye.
Than just the template.
Yeah, so you feel a lot of those other things more there than you would just flat foil versus flat foil in the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
When we talked about thrusters, we talked about F, P, and R, like neutral, pivot, and rake. Like, does that exist in quads in any kind of sense of the that strategy?
A good example of that would be the Merrick 5 fin. The fronts are super raked out.
Yep.
But the Bobby quad rear is really upright, so they kind of complement each other. You hold them next to each other, they don't even look like they go together in a set.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, you have all the drive and down the line projection off the fronts, and then you have that quad rear that's more upright in the rear, where you get that pivot, you get that release in the lip of the wave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a less extreme version of the controller, right? Because the controller has like the most rake and the most area, and then like a straight up, like blade in the back. Taylor, thank you for all the information on quads. For all of you watching, if you have any questions on any of the future quads that we covered, or would like to place an order for any of them, you can always reach us at the shop, 252-987-6000, or look us up online, realwatersports.com/surfing. Thanks for tuning in.